Hey, and welcome to Nuvo Online. My name is Patrick, and we're so glad that you decided to join us for this online experience. Tonight, we're going to be talking about joy unencumbered, and we'll be focusing in on what it means to genuinely experience joy in our lives. You're also going to get to hear an interview with my friend Craig Fullen. His life experience has led him to developing an amazing tool that will help you better apply some of the things that you're going to hear tonight. Now, if you want to go ahead and get this content, you can go to nuvochurch.org/joy to get those resources. That's nuvochurch.org/joy. Again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll get started here in just a few minutes.
Hey everybody, we're so glad that you're joining us tonight. My name is Emily and I'm so excited to kick off another Nuvo Church digital experience. Tonight we're going to be spending time talking about what it means to cultivate and develop a sense of joy in our lives. We all desire a life of happiness, right? Yet it constantly seems to be stolen by the frustrations of things far beyond our control. Maybe family disagreements, work challenges, school closings, or something else. It can chip away at the positive perspective that we try to so desperately hold on to. Having consistent joy can feel like a lot of work, and we want to help you with that. Tonight, our service is geared to help in that area, but we've also partnered with our friend Craig Fullen of Joy Mindset to help you learn to live a life full of joy. We've created a video series that will help you discover deeper meaning in both the highs and the lows and help you focus your thoughts to fuel and learn to unlock joy in every day. We'd love to send this to you. To access it, simply go to nuvochurch.org/joy and we'll send these videos to you as a follow-up to tonight's service. In our service, we also have some incredible music from our friend DJ Brennan from Garden MSC. If you're not following them yet, you can find them on YouTube or Instagram at Garden MSC. On their page, you'll find some of your favorite music as well as several originals we think you're gonna love. All right, we are so excited to get tonight started. Throughout the experience, we'd love for you to comment along in the comment section and let us know you're here. So go ahead and join the conversation by dropping your favorite emoji or meme and tell us where you're watching from. Thank you so much for joining us tonight at Nuvo Church.
Moment to moment in our lives, we find ourselves pursuing happiness. We feel the ebb and flow of big moments that make us smile, make us laugh, make us want to capture those moments and never let them go. We chase happiness through our relationships, our work, and the way that we spend our time. But we also know that happiness is fleeting. It's here today and gone almost as quickly as it came to us. Our lives almost feel like a culmination of the highs and the lows. And as our emotions go, often our lives go that way as well. A few years back, my family got home pretty late one night. And at the time, we were living just outside of the city, so when it got dark, it got really dark at our house, which means in the summertime, you can see all of the stars out at night. And so we get my 2-year-old son out of the car, and as a parent, you're trying so hard not to wake them up. Like I'm quietly opening the door, I'm carefully unlatching the buckle with the car seat. It's an art for a parent, isn't it? So I get him out of the car, and then 2 steps into our walk to the house, I can feel his head move off of my shoulder, and he rubs both of his eyes at the same time, and he immediately looks up. Now, I wish I could have captured this in slow motion because his face turned to this awestruck smile and I hear the most excited whisper, "Wow, Daddy, stars." He's like fully taken by this moment. Everything around him just fades away and he is fully present and he's full of wonder and he's captivated with joy. Now, you know that feeling as well, don't you? You've tasted what it is to experience unbridled moments of joy. Maybe for you it's when she said yes, or maybe when she said I do. Or maybe it was the first time that you held your daughter and you were simply left with this moment of just feeling wow. Maybe you experienced joy when there was a walk-off home run in the bottom of the 9th inning, or maybe for you it was standing on the side of a mountain and feeling ridiculously small but simultaneously larger than life. It's almost like these moments are signposts in our life. We want to feel that way all the time. We want to feel that sense of wonder and presence and the fullness of joy. Now, years ago, I heard a song by Jason Mraz called You and I, and he has this lyric that says this: "See, I'm all about them words, over numbers, unencumbered, numbered words. Hundreds of pages and pages and pages for words. More words than I had ever heard. I feel so alive." Now, I loved that verse, but I had no idea what unencumbered meant, so I had to look it up. And when I saw the definition, it instantly became one of my favorite words. Unencumbered means not impeded or slowed down, free to move, advance, or go forward, which is absolutely the perfect way to describe what we want most when it comes to joy. It's this free-flowing, never slowed down, consistently moving forward, and unbridled joy. Our hearts crave those moments, but between them, in the everyday kind of life moments, we tend to settle for a pursuit of happiness. And happiness is so different, isn't it? It's this emotional state that's based off of our current circumstances. It's this desire to get control over parts of our lives so that we can ensure that circumstances will either stay or become favorable. Rob Bell describes it as this binary state of being. You're either happy or you're something else, but it's never really happy and something else. It exists in this weird either-or scenario. And it's important that we recognize that because that binary disqualifies happy as equivalent to joy. Joy is so much more than a binary emotional state that you experience. Now, when I was a kid, I played baseball. In fact, baseball was life. I'd wake up on Saturday mornings, put on my Braves jersey, my fitted hat, I'd grab my Mizuno baseball glove, and then head out to the front yard. And the trees outside, they were like the green monster, and I'd hit home runs all day long. The problem was that I had never actually hit a home run in a game. And this was like a huge deal for 10-year-old me. I thought about it all the time, and as vain as it sounds, I'd even practice how I'd watch it fly over the fence like Ken Griffey Jr. And then one morning during a preseason Little League exhibition game, I stepped up to the plate. I grabbed my friend's brand new bat, which was like this North Carolina blue color and had never been used. And then the first pitch came, I connected on it and I pulled it to left field, and I had no idea how hard that I had hit it. And so I took off running full speed to first base. But about 7 steps in, I glanced over and saw it clear the left field wall. 175-foot Little League blast. And at that moment, all of the coolness that Ken Griffey Jr. had and that I wanted was completely thrown out the window. I lost my freaking mind. And by the time I got to second base, I was jumping up and down while I was running. I rounded second, I took my helmet off, both arms were flailing around in the air. And as I got to third, I saw my third base coach standing there. But he was standing there with his arms crossed, head tilted, sunflower seeds filling the side of his cheek. And I'm not sure what I expected from him, but I thought maybe like a little excitement, right? But as I got to third base, still elated in the moment, he spits out a seed and all he says is, if you take your helmet off in a real game, they'll call you out. So put it on now. And so at third base, I literally stopped, put my helmet back on, and I jogged home. Have you ever come across somebody like that? At a moment where someone is experiencing deep joy, isn't it ironic that there always seems to be someone else around the corner who is locked, loaded, and ready to douse that fire with cool water? The cynic never seems to be too far away from the person who is pursuing joy. Now, I had never actually looked up what cynic meant because as soon as you use the word, most of us have a person that comes to our mind, but the definition is actually very powerful. A cynic is a fault-finding, captious critic. It's the existential needle-carrying, balloon-popping person that lives both outside of you, but also within you. They exist outside of you in the form of those people, like that coach or that person on Facebook who continually pops up in your news feed, or that passive-aggressive friend with the one sentence that levels the moments of joy that you find yourself in. But the cynic exists outside of you, but also inside of you as well. Have you ever experienced those moments when you felt guilt around experiencing joy? Or there's a part of you that always tries to keep you just enough detached so that you feel numb to the beauty in your life? At the root of all of those things is this form of detachment. Detachment from the pursuit of joy is in some ways a protection from being vulnerable. Because it can be easy for you to cross your arms, embrace the cynic, and stand at arm's length from those things that might cause you pain or disappointment. The distance of a cynic both protects them from the pain, but it also erodes the capacity to experience joy, which is what your heart most longs for anyway. The problem is that the process of detachment misunderstands what joy is actually about. The assumption is that joy is determined by your lack of pain or suffering or heartache or struggle, but it's not. Joy is the fullness of all of it, but a perspective that chooses a different way of being within it. Now, a friend of mine named Craig Fullen has had experiences in his life that have caused him to work out what joy actually looks like in the midst of pain and struggle. Craig is going to walk us through a little of his story and how happiness and joy aren't always as connected as sometimes we assume that they are.
So Craig, we're talking about what it looks like to live a life full of joy. And I know from our conversations, you've been on a journey of that for several years. I mean, talk to us, what is it that sparked that journey and that process of discovery for you?
Yeah, I have been on a journey, and it really started with struggling with worry, concern, and anxiety, really into adulthood. And then trying to figure out, well, how can I get past this? How can I have more joy in my life? And so as part of the things I was doing to improve my mindset, I also then had to deal with certain personal situations. I had to deal with health issues with my kids. I had to deal with uncertainty and changes in my career, which, now I'm still dealing with that with COVID. I'm sure a lot of other people are too. And then over a year ago, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, and we had to go through that whole process with the diagnosis, with the chemotherapy treatments and surgeries.
Wow, that's no small list of things, man. What is it in those moments? Like, what were the times where you realized, I've got to change my perspective, I've got to change my mindset to find joy?
Yeah, so of those three things, I think that the most pivotal one for me was dealing with the kids' health issues and just realizing that I needed to let go of control of that. And when I was able to do that and restructure my mindset and able to find joy more internally, I was able to move past those things and deal with whatever outcome might happen. And that also prepared me to deal with the other issues that I had to face with a career or with my wife's cancer. And actually, I would say when my wife's cancer diagnosis came, I was in a pretty good mindset right then, like, hey, let's tackle this.
You were ready.
And yeah.
Wow, that's amazing just to see how one experience built to the next experience, was built to the next, and you discovered greater levels of joy out of all of it. So through that journey, I mean, talk to us, like, what's the biggest thing that you've learned? If you could give us one thing today, what's the biggest thing you've learned from that journey of discovering joy?
Sure. A lot of it was rooted when I heard about 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18, which talks about be joyful always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances. And so the idea of just being joyful always really resonated with me, and it really pushed me to think about that concept and to search for joy in all circumstances, regardless of what I was going through. And a lot of people get caught up in this idea of searching for happiness in things or searching for happiness in situations. And if this happens, I'll be happy, or I'm happy because of this. And I really wanted to have joy regardless of what was going around me.
I think he's absolutely right. Happiness is about what happens to you, but joy goes so much deeper than that. Now, the writers in the Bible actually have a unique way of talking about this, and one of those writers is named James. James was interesting because he was a brother of Jesus and came to be a follower of Jesus later on, but certainly not at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. In fact, one account in the New Testament talks about how James challenged Jesus and misunderstood Jesus' mission, which, if you're not a follower of Jesus, kind of begs the question, what would it take to convince one of your siblings that you were the Son of God? Now, whatever it was for James, he found himself convinced and led within that in the early church. Now, one of the groups of people that he led were from the Jerusalem church, who had been scattered throughout the ancient world. During this time, there was certainly oppression and difficulty for those who were followers of Jesus, which is the backdrop from the words that we find James writing to his audience. He talks about what it means to have joy and all that it encompasses. Here's what he says: "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters." What he's going to describe after this are not usually the types of things that we would associate with joy. Beyond that, he's also making the assumption that joy is something that you choose, which is a big statement that we might believe at times, but we don't always apply. James is showing that we choose this perspective of joy. Another way to translate these words is treated as altogether an occasion for joy. In other words, take this moment and reframe it through the lens of what joy is. Then he goes on, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. Choose joy in the midst of whatever life brings to you." For his audience, many of them were facing persecution. In that instance, he's saying, choose joy, which is wildly counterintuitive because no one associates joy with that kind of pain. And this is where James speaks to the philosophical perspective held by many in the ancient and the modern world. Like in a culture that bends towards detachment, right? When you would say, like, in proximity to a philosophy that would say the way to serenity is to stop pursuing joy altogether, James leans in and he says, choose joy, even in the midst of pain and suffering and uncertainty and difficulty. Whenever life comes and whatever it brings, choose the joy perspective. But he isn't just talking about persecution. The trials of many kinds can be translated multicolored or multifaceted. right? We're talking about the full gamut of your life. Any difficulty, any pain, any suffering, even pandemic life, right? All of it, a multicolored spectrum of trials and difficulty. Whenever it comes and whatever comes, choose joy. And then he goes on. He says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith. And this is where for James, we find the anchor point to all that he's going to say. The joy perspective is deeply connected to our faith. And not the kind of faith that you like conjure up, not the kind of wishful thinking or cross your finger superstitious kind of faith. It's a faith that's rooted in trust. Like, do you believe that God is who he said that he is? Do you believe that God will do what he said and has promised to do? Do you believe that he is redeeming all things back to the way that it should be? Ultimately, do you trust your Heavenly Father? Now, all of our experiences in life, they test our faith. But difficulty and struggle, they illuminate what our faith is in a very unique way. It's like you're forced to come to grips with what you actually believe about God and about who he is. These moments don't just test our faith, they actually produce something inside of us. Here's what he says. He says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. There is a sense that God is doing something on the inside of you through the experiences that you have. Whatever circumstance or situation that you might find yourself in, James is saying that God is producing perseverance in you. And there's a facet of your character that will only be developed through the trials that you walk through. It's giving you strength and staying power within your circumstances. It gives you both the possibility to presently flourish and then look to the future with hope because of who God is and what he has promised. It's the now, but also the not yet. It's being fully present and choosing joy in the moment. It's bringing the fullness of your emotions to this present moment, but it's not trying to be anything other than all of you in the midst of that moment of choosing the beauty of joy. But it's also looking ahead with hope, knowing that joy is found in the coming moment, in the next moment, and the next, and the next. Joy is a full engagement of your human experience, combined with a conscious choice of perspective, which kind of makes me ask, are you fully engaged? Like, are you fully present and bringing all of your emotions to your experiences? Do you ever just fake it, right? Even with yourself. Like, are you pretending to be happy? Are you only choosing to see the pain in your life while simultaneously missing all of the beauty that's around you? And then he goes on and he says, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. He says, choose joy in the midst of whatever life brings to you. For his audience, many of them were actually facing persecution. In that instance, choose joy. But he isn't just talking about a fleeting emotion. He's talking about reframing the circumstances in light of your hope for the future. Within your pain, excitement, happiness, uncertainty, within the fullness of your human experience, you have the capacity to grow and become mature in life and in faith. And our hope is that God is making something new both inside of us and then doing something extraordinary through us. If we're open and we allow it to happen, God uses our experiences to make us who we most desire to be. About 2 weeks before my son Henry was born, my mom was about to go into a surgery for a relatively routine kind of knee surgery thing. And I'll never forget being in the waiting room and planning to be there for a few hours while they did it. But about 15 minutes after they'd taken her back, the doctor came out to talk to me, and they told me that there was a problem. When they had begun sedating her for the surgery, they noticed some abnormalities in her heart rhythm and discovered a heart problem that we didn't even know that she had. And so they got her stabilized, and eventually they moved her to a room. And the doctors would come in and run tests that, the whole rest of the day. You ever realize how you remember all the random details, especially in the difficult moments of life? Like, I remember the weird polyester-esque kind of fabric on the recliner in the room. And I remember the speckled pattern on the tiles on the floor. I don't remember the nurse's face, but I do remember that she had this UNC Carolina blue color of her shoes. I remember it poured rain all that afternoon and then all through the night as well. I fell asleep in that hospital recliner around 1 a.m. and I woke up to a nurse running some more tests the next morning. I hadn't really eaten anything, and the nurse who was on call actually called me out of the room. And we had this weird, bizarre kind of exchange. She looks at me and she says, "Hey, you need to eat some breakfast. Do you like omelets?" And truth be told, I had never had an omelet before. That's right, 28 years old, and I had never ever had an omelet. And I just kind of looked at her confused. And she goes on and she keeps saying like, "Hey, you need to go downstairs and you need to meet Lois because Lois makes the best omelets." Now, honestly, this was like the last thing on my mind. I don't even think I responded to her. I just started walking that way, and when I got down to the cafeteria area, there was literally an omelet station with an older woman standing there with an apron, a hairnet, and his name tag that read Lois. I mean, she was the kind of person who exuded an enormous amount of sass before she ever opened her mouth, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? It's kind of like if Sophia from the Golden Girls, Claire Huxtable, and Todd Crisley were all wrapped into one human being. This would be Lois. And then she asked me what I wanted on my omelet. I told her like, I've never even had one. And then this woman goes off, right? She started cracking jokes and she started telling me stories. She was asking me like why I was even there. And then she would bring it back around and have me laughing again. I told her I was about to be a dad and she started telling me about her dad and what made him great, right? It felt like the time went by so fast. And looking back, I have no idea how we covered so much ground while she just made time making an omelet. But after she finished it, she put it in the box and she leans over the glass counter and she hands it to me. And then she looks at me and she says, "You know, it's okay to feel it all, even at one time. That's just part of the joy." I love that, right? That's just part of the joy. All of it together, not distance from pain or simply an observer of what brings happiness. It's taking a perspective on your life where you go, you know what, I'm going to be present fully in the world. That you have the capacity to experience joy in whatever circumstance you find yourself in. Let's talk about how. Right, first, you focus in on what you're focused on. Every moment of your life, you give your attention to something or someone. What commands your attention will expand in your experience. When you decide to choose joy, when you decide to take a mindset that encompasses all of your life and see the joy within it, your experience will change even if your circumstances do not. Focus in on what you're focused on to make the changes that you need to make. Next, silence the inner and the outer cynic. This doesn't mean that you only try to see the positive in life. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm saying lean into it fully. Cynicism keeps you at a distance, but the person who experiences real joy knows the fullness of the circumstances and the emotion that they're in. They just choose a different posture through all of it. They choose to see the beauty because they are fully present in those moments. Then you reframe and you recapture. Intentionality matters. Reframe your circumstances through the lens of hope, not in yourself, but in what Jesus has done. Joy exists in the presence of the right now and the expectation of the not yet. It sees that there is more to our lives than the temporal. When you reframe your circumstances, you can recapture the joy that you most long for. Joy isn't a this or that. Joy isn't simply happy or excited. Joy isn't shallow in nature. Joy is a complex mosaic of the fullness of your life, your emotions, and your circumstances. And it's accessible through your perspective. It's accessible through your decision to be present and see the world through eyes that say, wow, look at the stars. It moves past the inner and the outer cynic because it isn't interested in distance. It wants to be all in. Joy reminds us of our human experience and it points us to something more. It's a connection to both the beauty of the now and the expectation of beauty in the not yet. It's choosing to be open and expectant so that you don't miss the joyful human experience that is all around you. It's untethered to your happenings and free to flow in and through every moment of your life. This is the joy that Jesus invites us into. This is the power of joy unencumbered.
peace rivers from lowly seas to where they rise, against the rush of grace descending from the source of its supply. 'Cause in the highlands and the heartache, you are neither more or less inclined. And I will search and stop at nothing. Oh, you're just not that hard to find. So I will praise you on the mountains, and I will praise you in the mountains in my way. You're the summit where my feet are. So I will praise you in the valleys all the same. No less God within the shadows, no less faithful when the night leads me astray. You're the heaven where my heart is. In the highlands and the heartache I will sing. Oh, oh, how far beneath your glory does your kindness extend the path of where your feet rest on the sunrise to where you sweep the sinner's path. And oh, how fast would you come running if just a shadow me through the night and trace my steps through all my failures and walk me out the other side. For who could dare ascend that mountain, the valleyed hill called Calvary, but for the one I call Good Shepherd, who like a lamb was slain for me. So I will praise you on the mountains, and I will praise you in the mountains in my way. You're the summit where my feet are. So I will praise you in the valleys all the same. No less God within the shadows, no less faithful when the night leads me astray. You're the heaven where my heart is. In the highlands and the heartache all the same. Oh, in the highlands and the heartache all the same. Oh,
Hey, thank you again for joining us tonight. If this is your first time being a part, I wanted to let you know about the after party to our experience. Many of us watching get together to hang out and talk a bit more about the message, and it's a great first step into getting to know our church. If you'd like to join us, simply go to nuvochurch.org/lobby. Also tonight, you got to hear an interview with my good friend Craig Fullen. His life experience has led him to developing a coaching tool that will help you better apply some of what you heard tonight. Now, if you want to go ahead and get this content, you can go to nuvochurch.org/joy to get those resources. That's nuvochurch.org/joy. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you at the after party in 3, 2, 1.